Hey, what's up guys? Irish Pepper 2A and Remy here. We're doing another video today, and today I thought I really wanted to talk about uh, the aspects of camping versus prepping. And with prepping, when we're talking about being out, we call that bugging out, versus bushcraft. Now, before everybody gets in a huff about that, I mean, I know when you go out, you set up camp, you establish a camp, you have a base area. When I'm saying camping in this video today, I'm talking about its most modern form. That's with all the amenities. You can camp in an RV. You can camp, when we go deer hunting and we're staying in a cabin, we're at deer camp. The Boy Scouts go out there at scout camp. So there's so many interpretations of the word camping. And you can do it minimalistic, or you can do it with, as I said, every modern convenience available to you. Now, if you're a prepper and you're going into a bug out scenario, you want to be a very light and efficient traveler. And you can have some of the amenities that camping would afford you, but things like a hot tent, a wood stove, those are completely impractical for a bug out situation. Now, when we talk about bushcraft, I mean, that is a whole other animal in and of itself. You have the most minimal equipment. As a matter of fact, you might only have, that. You have a knife, and you're getting everything that you need along the way. You're creating it, you're manufacturing it as you go. It is, as I said, very minimalistic. So, the things that I want to reiterate in this video today is when you say, okay, I'm going camping for the weekend, I'm getting back out into the wild, are you really? What have you brought with you? People that, might say, I'm going camping and I'm going as rough as possible. Well, you may have brought a hatchet. You may have brought a folding saw, not to mention the knife. And, if you're going to start fires when you're camping, chances are you have a lighter or an accelerant. Again, I know there's people that are diehard campers, and this is not meant to cut down. It's just about, trying to get, definitions for what you're actually out here doing. Okay. And, campers, they, might have coolers, other things, foods that are going to expire within, the next 24, 36 hours, things like that. There's any number of things when you're camping. And again, going to reiterate, camping in its most modern sense. Now, if you are, a prepper and going out and moving, as I said, you want to be as efficient and, how do I want to say this? The most efficient and lightweight as possible with tools. So, with a prepper might only carry one or the other of these. A prepper would have, maybe a canteen, some form of water system. If you're going for, you know, a little bit more luxury, you might have an e-tool or something like that. Of course, you're always going to have your knife, but a prepper is going to, you know, start their fire, you know, with a ferro rod. This ferro rod is going to last a heck of a lot longer than that Bic lighter. Is it as practical? You know, no. Is it as easy? Absolutely not. You know, there's a lot of people that, you know, swear by having that Bic lighter and say, you know, they would not go without it. Thing about it is, sooner or later, that stuff is going to run out. So you better be efficient with your other tools. Now, moving on to, you know, something like bushcraft, and I need to get a fire going. Well, you're going to be rubbing this stuff together in one way, shape, or form. Whether that be a bow drill, hand drill, pump drill, anything like that. You're going to be at the bare bones minimum. You comfy in there, buddy? You like that? He likes the shelter that I put up. So let's talk about shelters for a quick second here. You know, when you're camping, you might have a, you know, prefab tent that, you know, you can put up, and, you know, the instructions are there, all the pieces are there. It's, you know, basically mechanical. You just put the poles where they're supposed to be. Boom. You have shelter for the night. If you're doing a prepping bug out situation, all you might have is a tarp and some paracord and some cutting instruments. Make it happen. And you're going to come up with something like that. If you're doing the bushcraft, well then you're basically cutting down pieces of nature and making a lean-to, making a shelter like that. One of the biggest points that I want to get across in this video today is that there's a certain order to these different systems of enjoying nature. You can camp, again, in the most modern form. You can camp and still practice prepping. You can camp and still practice bushcraft. However, you cannot do prepping / bug out and camp. I know you're going to say, what am I doing at night? I'm setting up camp. Yeah, we've been through this, okay? Don't take the word literally. I'm talking about the equipment involved. You cannot bushcraft and camp, as it were. You know, when, you know, it comes down to food items and whatnot, like I said, you know, campers might have access to, you know, things that are going to go bad, things that can come in a cooler. Prepper would have something like MREs, some canned foods, different things like that, you know, things that you can cook with a little bit of prepared water, some boiling water, things of that nature. Bushcrafting, you got to find what you're going to eat out here. You have to hunt it down and, you know, make it happen, you know, setting snares, traps, primitive fishing, all sorts of things of that nature. Again, you know, bushcraft, are you going to be using primitive tools? A prepper / somebody bugging out is probably going to have modern day firearms. And somebody that's camping would probably really not be that concerned about it because there's going to be safety nearby. Chances are, you know, you'll be camping in a state park or, you know, a well-known area. You know, it's, you know, maybe you're along the Appalachian Trail. People frequent that up and down all the time. You know, you're really not going to be lost off the grid, which is something that prepping and bug out and bushcrafters would be doing. So, with all that mess of information being spewed out there, when it comes right down to it, if in an SHTF situation, you could start off by camping and perhaps getting by. Sooner or later, that's going to evolve into a prepper slash bug out scenario. After you've exhausted your resources in that, you're going to come down to basic bushcraft. What type of skills do you have? Can you start that fire with just a couple sticks and some cordage? You know, can you fashion a makeshift weapon to take down potential food sources or take down potential threats? The system is going to disintegrate, it's going to de-evolve and go back to the most basic. It started with the most basic, it has evolved into the pinnacle. If there is ever a time when things collapse, it's not going to stay up here, it's going to go back down. And you should really have the skills and practice and do your research to be able to go down that scale and perform with those techniques and those tools. So with that being said, guys, like I said, I just wanted to, do a little study here on camping versus bug out versus bushcraft and the differences and possible similarities that you can find with that. I beseech you all, go out there, practice. Don't always take the easy road because it's not always going to be easy. All right, there's going to come a time when you have to step up and you're going to need to have that knowledge and those skills. All right, guys, so I have said enough today. Irish Pepper 2A and, oh my goodness, Remy the Slug. Look at that. You see that? Yeah, Remy the Slug. We are going to sign off. I hope you all have a blessed day. Stay safe, and we will see you next time.